my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Machine Shop Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Van Metre, and today it's my true joy to share with you this conversation with Matt Gawlik from 3D Graphite. I've known Matt for many years. I love the way he thinks about building businesses. He just has a very clear way of thinking about it and expressing those ideas. Just a few things we're going to dig into today. We're going to talk about sales being such a foundational thing that every business needs to focus on. He says it's the tip of the spear. If you don't have a full pipeline, you are forced to tolerate bad customers. I want to let that sink in for a minute. If you don't have a full pipeline, you are forced to tolerate bad customers. We just did a workshop a few days ago, and this was a topic of conversation. You know, a full pipeline gives you options for getting rid of bad part numbers, getting rid of bad jobs, bad customers. So it's just so important in moving the needle in a successful business. And then when you're doing those sales, you got to be focused on a niche, right? You can't be great at everything. In fact, if you're great at everything, you're probably not actually that great at everything. So yeah, he's focused on, building his businesses to be very niche focused. And we know I've had many other guests talk about that's a successful formula for them. So some good stuff there. We talk deeply about core values. Matt is just such a strong believer in core values: integrity, attention to detail, grit, emotional maturity, self-reflection. These are all things that help create a great culture. And, through using the EOS tools and the EOS method, entrepreneurial operating system, Matt does this exceedingly well. And then he's just big on systems, right? Systems, managing people. Of course, we're a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of that. So it's a great conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it. So without further ado, let's dig in. Well, good afternoon, Matt. Welcome to the Machine Shop Mastery Podcast.
Good afternoon.
Good to have you here. So I have admired how you have run the last two businesses that I have known about with 3D Graphite and 3D Industries. And I think you're a student of business, a student of life. You are curious and you learn and are open. And I know you're going to share a lot of great stuff today. So thank you, first of all, for being willing to get on the show. And let's start by giving a bit of your background. I know you're sort of third generation in the manufacturing industry, and then have owned a few different companies. So let's dig into that story.
Yeah, so I got into business through family, which I don't recommend. It's tough. But my grandfather had the Bridgeport line here in Chicago or Illinois, and
Very cool.
My dad kind of followed in his footsteps, started doing sales repping. When I got out of college, I started doing some manufacturing for him. And then I started being a serial entrepreneur. And I've started, I've never really counted. I guess it'd be 6 different companies, maybe 7.
Wow.
7. I guess 7 counting I recently started a consulting company called D3 Traction Group. So yeah, 7 different companies. Yeah, but I cut my teeth and learned from all my mistakes running 3D Industries and 3D Graphite. I made every mistake. I always say everybody's like, well, how'd you learn? I'm like, by failing well. So it was, learning from my mistakes. I made every one of them at least 3 times, probably.
Was 3D Graphite, 3D Industries the first shop you started? Or was there another one prior to that?
I was involved in starting Modern Graphite, which took my dad's company from repping to doing some distribution and manufacturing of our own. And then I started 3D Pros, which is a die mold overflow service. We did a lot of core and cavity work for mold shops back in the late 90s, early 2000s when they were really busy. A lot of real complex type 5-axis machining, EDM. That led to 3D Industries, which we did a lot of aerospace machining and medical, just anything super ultra precision, complex, fast lead time type stuff. Had a fishing lure company for a long time where I manufactured molds and made my own fishing lures for the musky fishing industry. If anybody listening, it was ERC. I made the Hellhound and the Dick Pearson Triple D and the Grinder. So those were kind of staples, are still staples in the musky fishing industry. Sold that. Yeah. And then 3D Graphite, and D3 Traction Group. And I also have a company where I flip farms. So I buy recreational property, rehab it for wildlife, and then resell it. Do a lot of that too. So.
That is very cool. Let's go back to the beginning of 3D Industries, if we can. What year did that company start?
I'm guessing. I think it was 7 years ago, 7, 8 years ago. When did we meet? We met about 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's
8 years ago.
2025. Yeah, it's 2017, 2018.
Yeah, so it was probably 2016, 2017 is when I started 3D Industries over in
Oh,
Bensonville,
wow.
Illinois.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was only a year or two old when we started. It was already pretty good sized
Yeah.
when we met.
Well, I combined one of my shops with another shop.
Got it.
At the time,
Okay.
I did a partnership. And just so everybody is listening, wants to open up a machine shop, I will say this and take this to my grave. Every partnership is a sinking ship. That's my motto. Be careful.
Yeah, I've seen and heard a lot of stories of companies
Yeah.
going. It can go well, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it can go well. Yeah, and I just make a joke about that, but it is a warning to everybody that if you're going to partner, make sure that it's like being married, and there can be a lot of issues associated with that. But some of the best companies I know in manufacturing are actually partnerships, actually. But it is few and far between. It's a warning I always give everybody when asked. So it is tough.
So, well, maybe sticking with that for a second, what are some things you would advise people that are considering getting into a partnership to talk about, to get on the table, to really understand about one another, to make sure they don't, go down a path that's not going to end up working well for them?
You need to get a really good lawyer that knows business law and get a prenup agreement. I didn't prep for this question, but there's a lot to that. But like, there's a lot it'd be the same as if I was going to suggest, if someone was getting married, I'd say, a prenup is probably, I think, can most likely keep your marriage together more than a marriage that doesn't have that, right? So things can get chaotic in business or in marriage, in any relationship. So while you are friends and while you're in love, the honeymoon phase, you want to put in, logical steps for termination, or logical steps for, your org chart, understanding the difference between ownership and working for a company. They're different,
Mm-hmm.
right? Roles are going to change, right? As you start a partnership, it's a few people or 10 or 20, and you're going to grow, and everybody's roles are going to be different. So it can get really sticky when you become
Yeah.
successful. It usually works when everybody's working really hard and trying to outwork their partner, but that isn't going to last forever. And then everybody's just going to kind of lay back into their, the roles that they belong in. And, that's when things can get very strange. So just talking about everything, talking with other people that have had partnerships, in the past. That's what I did. My lawyer that I chose, was in a law partnership with his partners, and we kind of followed their lead to get a really good partnership agreement, so that we could, follow the rules. So we're not trying to make rules as we go. So it was really good advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's good. Yeah. I know it's not on our normal list.
Right.
um, one of the things that was always fascinating to me about 3D Industries and Graphite is your choice of equipment. You
Mhm.
clearly decided very early on to invest in very nice, high-end, accurate, fast equipment. Why don't
Yeah.
you share what kind of equipment you use, why you made those choices, and how that's maybe different from shops that just buy a bunch of houses or whatever and try to go at it?
Yeah, so I had a lot of exposure to different types of shops, being in, doing sales repping and sales my whole life. So I did a lot of overflow work for other shops and sold cutting tools to shops, different types of materials, services. So all the shops that I revered spent a lot of money on state of the art equipment, software, systems, people. So I mean, you get what you pay for. So um, And that's kind of how when I started manufacturing with 3D Pros, this is going way back into like, I think it has to be 21 years ago is when I first got into 5-axis. And in die mold, there wasn't a lot of people in 5-axis. So it was kind of new. I don't know if your listeners understand, 5-axis and die mold, but there's a lot of EDM. And I sell to the EDM market now. I have a graphite company. So, but I can remember a company called Creative Die Mold in Illinois, and one of my favorite shops. Owners are great people there, really good customer. They bought Yazda, is a Japanese made machine, really high end.
Yep.
I mean, you can
Yep.
split tenths this thing. And my graphite sales went from like, let's say $200,000 a year to $30,000 a year. And I called up their foreman. I'm like, hey, what's going on? He says, wow, we're doing hard milling. I'm like, what's that? I didn't know. He's like, well, he showed me what hard milling was. I went in there. I was like, oh my God. So I didn't buy a Yazda. I bought a Röders, but I immediately got into that business because I thought, wow, they're going to eliminate EDM. But of course, you can't eliminate EDM, but
entirely.
it did take a huge chunk of our business. So that was when the light bulb went off in my head where it's like, okay, a really easy way to get an edge on your competition is by buying the best equipment.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about Röders for those that don't know the brand and what makes them so special.
Jürgen Röders went to school here in the States. He's German. For his doctorate or whatever, but he designed a machine. He was an engineer. He designed a machine for his dad. I hope I get this right. He designed a machine for his dad that owned the largest blow mold manufacturer in Germany. That's how it started. He made a machine for his dad. And then they did that. They designed it. They built it. And it's amazing. I mean, they were the first to really wrap their brains around linear technology, which is kind of mainstream now. But at the time, I mean, it's when you're running a linear machine, I mean, they're fast, but you're dealing with a lot of heat. So all the engineering that goes into a Röders and then manage that heat when you're literally trying to machine within 50 millionths or a tenth or whatever. 50 millionths is kind of an opinion, not really a measurement, but anyway, I mean, it's amazing. So, like let's say you were a mold shop and you're used to doing a lot of mold making at the end of the job, trying to fit a corn cavity.
Yep.
With the Röders, you can machine the negative tolerance and the corn cavity will just fit together. There's no mold making at the end. In theory, of course, that's not true every time, but a lot of them, that's when mold making kind of shifted over to mold manufacturing, which is like they would design the processes ahead of time so they didn't have to do a lot of fitting at the end. Everything would just fit together, each individual component. So Röders was, that's how I got into doing that. I started doing hard milling and graphite electro machining using 5-axis, and forever it was a secret weapon of mine. I mean, it still is. I have a whole bunch of Röders now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there is a machine that is equivalent to it right now. There's a lot of machines that are close, and aerospace is starting to open their eyes to Yazda, Sodic, Ingersoll, Röders, getting away from your typical lower end machine. I won't name names. I mean, there's a time and a place for every machine, but I think that, as fast as when I was at 3D Industries, I would do quoting against people doing aluminum machining. And, sometimes I would be 80% cheaper than my competitor. Well, I was using 5-axis and I was using aluminum cutters. I mean, it was real. I was making tons of money, unattended machining where they were using, a machine, they were doing, 4 or 5 setups, right? On like an older machine that, is just creeping along and, I'm roughing at, 2,000 inches a minute in aluminum.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
And did I remember correctly that they've made their own controls and everything? So it's like the closed loop system they built allows that incredible speed and accuracy more than putting on some Fennec controls or this and that.
Yeah, it's a window-based control. It's their own control. It's it's like I mean, it's complicated, but I mean, I'm not the one to go into detail on the genius of the Röders control. But for us, and we like to do unattended machining, and we're really into getting really, really tight accuracies. And that Röders control gives you a lot of opportunity to dial in
Mm.
your machining processes. So, yeah, it's a great control.
When I've watched videos of them cutting, it almost looks like you're watching it on like 2 or 3x speed, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's actual, 100% feed rates and rapids, and it's just remarkable. I definitely encourage people to go look up some videos of them. They're really cool.
I posted one on my YouTube channel. It's a 3D graphite machining YouTube channel. It was a roughing video, and I got all sorts of phone calls from people asking me if I had sped up that. I'm like, no, that's actual cutting feed rates, and they didn't believe me. And what's really weird about Röders is like a lot of machines that I would buy. Like I love Matsura. Matsura is a great machine. One of my favorite machine tools. Love that company. Absolutely love them. And you have to get your cut out your concrete, get a pad made, and you got to drill everything into because there's a lot of movement with the 5-axis whipping around these heavy parts. Röders sits on 3 pads. The whole machine moves. So all of that cutting, even like Eric from Elba Tool,
Yeah.
and he has a massive Röders. I don't know how big it is, but you've got a massive, the size of a TV die cavity or core,
Mhm.
and he's cutting that thing like this fast. And that whole machine that you need steps to step up on is just sitting on these like foam pads, 3 of them.
Wild.
Wild. It's all German engineering. I mean, it's amazing. Like people don't realize like all the engineering. And I always laugh because when I go to IMTS, the Röders booth, it's just like one machine and a couple salesmen, and they literally have the most accurate machine on the planet and fastest. It's I don't like I said I don't know of another one that's in its league. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
That is super cool. Just so bringing it back to like business strategy, you saw it as a real enabler of not only hitting tolerances on this die mold work, but just the sheer speed of doing production work that would
Mhm.
let you quote well below market, but you're still making great margins.
Well, first and foremost, you got to have the right people that can think outside the box because there's a lot of different ways you can skin a cat on a part. And so, if you give me a Haas or an Akuma or a Matsura, you're kind of limited in what you can do, especially for unattended machining. And again, every part is different, but if you have the best machine on the planet plus really creative, innovative people on setups we call it NUMA. It's one of our core values we look for at 3D, which is like thinking outside the box, but not completely outside the box. So you wouldn't want to, I have had engineers that have worked for me where they could come up with these like crazy out of the box setups that you're like, wow, that's great. And then Rody would come over and be like, why don't we just use a vise and do this? And you're like, oh yeah. So genius isn't always complex. Most of the time it's simple. But if you have the best equipment and you have people that have like Pneuma, which is stoic creative thought, that combination is just deadly when you're trying to get an edge on competition. Think of wire EDM. What an edge you can get on wire by stacking parts up. I don't know if did you do
Right.
wire at Pro
Yep.
CNC? Yeah.
We didn't, but I certainly understand well enough to understand the
Yeah. I mean,
difference.
I know a shop out there that had 4 wire EDMs. And after they paid themselves, they were making over $650,000 a year for wires. Why? How did they do that? Well, they unattended, and it was all in their setups, and they were making piles of money because they were thinking outside the box. So wire, although it's simple, it's a really great way to get an edge on your competition if you got a really, really good wire guy. You got to have a good wire, right? You got to have one that's going to be able to be that can thread. That you're not going to have any errors when you walk in the morning because you didn't have any good threading. There's a lot of good wire idioms out there. I like Mitsubishi the best. Um, but yeah, you can really get a great edge if you have the best equipment. But if you handicap your people with, low level equipment, I mean, they're limited. I mean, you can only get so creative, right? So that combination between like really creative engineering and state of the art equipment, truly state of the art equipment, is deadly when getting an edge.
That's super intriguing. Yeah, the power of that combination together, and I can certainly picture what you mean by that. If you could have take a simple analogy. You could have a Formula One car. If you don't have a great driver for it, it's going to be slow as hell. But if you
Yeah,
have a really great
absolutely.
driver, you're going to be setting
I
records.
got a funny story about that. So I have a lot of friends in the manufacturing industry, a lot of friends that sell equipment and sell cutting tools and material. And a lot of the old timers, the ones I respect that have been around for a long time, I always ask the same. I think I asked you this question actually last time you were in my shop. I said, if you were going to start a shop, what would you remember when I asked you that question?
Hmm.
Yeah, I always ask everybody that question. And the cutting tool guys are always like, I want to go buy a shop that's got low level equipment, have an auction, sell it all off, buy a horizontal machining cell from Matsura or a Röders cell or something, Swiss machines, whatever it is to automate. And just because these companies are making money with this old equipment, running it in ancient ways. And it's like, and they're just looking at these guys, watching them. I remember when I was a kid watching guys machine graphite with uncoated carbide, and diamond coating was available, and I'm like, what are they doing? Like, so just there's so many shops out there that are leaving so much money on the table because of they don't know. They're not always trying to push the limits, which I could never understand why they wouldn't want to push limits.
If there's someone listening that resonates for them, they're like, yeah, we're not really pushing it well enough, hard enough, and being innovative or creative or discovering new technologies. Where would you suggest they start to try to get better at that?
Well, the internet. If I had YouTube when I first started, I taught myself how to run Mastercam and run a house all by myself, literally by myself. I mean, it was just trial and error. I mean, if I had access to YouTube, you got to weed through a lot of the BS. There's a lot of BS out there, but there's so much good information on cutting tools and material and programming and I would go to like the larger cutting tool companies. That's really easy. Like OSG's got a great group, applications group. Mike Rosbowski over there, I think he's still there. That guy could walk into your shop and save you, oh my God, gobs of money if you listen to him, right? Like
Right.
these application guys, but you got to get the right one. You don't want to get a salesman. You want to get an application engineer that understands. And then a lot of the application groups for the companies, like for instance, like Mitsubishi, like one of the great reasons, when I was doing a lot of EDM, I went with Mitsubishi because of their applications group. This Pat over there. I mean, geez, or Dennis. Dennis isn't there anymore, but like these guys can, again, for free, come in your shop and give you pointers on, with so many years of experience, being in all these different shops, seeing how people do things. So that would be where I would start, getting a good network of people you can
Hmm.
talk to and trust.
That is such good advice. Yeah. So, Metalworking Nation that are listening, yeah, lean on these experts. I know that we certainly had people that came into our shop that clearly had really deep expertise, and we'd just be like sponges, asking them all sorts of questions and learning. Because when we started our shop, we were in our early 20s. We didn't know hardly anything. We'd
Right.
taken a few courses in college, made a few parts for our race cars, and thought we'd give it a go. But and I think there's this cultural piece of especially men, in our modern world that are supposed to know everything, supposed to be experts at everything. It's not okay to to admit that you don't know everything. But there's no point in reinventing the wheel, and you will be far better off if you show some humility, show some vulnerability, and say, yeah, this job is kicking my ass. I'm tearing up tools. Please help me, show me the way, right? And find those really experienced people to help you out. So that's great advice. You mentioned core values, and what was the word? Muna? Muna? What's
Numa.
that word? Numa. Okay. Talk about core values in your business, the importance of them, the significance of having them.
Well, as you know, I'm a huge Traction fan. Gino Wickman wrote a book
Yep.
called Traction is the EOS system. I also do business consulting for CNC job shops around Pro Shop and Traction, full disclosure. But it all starts with core values. So with the way the book's written, you kind of pick your own core values. But the way that what we did was we spent a lot of time trying to find what like the universal core values would be, kind of put those together. And that's your starting point for building a team is if you don't have those core values, what's the point? Integrity. What are you going to do if you don't, if you're going to be working with somebody in upper management or anywhere in your company that doesn't have integrity? Fanatic attention to detail, like perspective to your job, right? Unconditional follow through. Got to have it, right? A lot of people don't think that grit is measurable, but it is. Grit, Angela Duckworth from UMass has a great 10-question test to measure your grit. You should have you, Matt, and Kelsey take the grit test. I guarantee you will score high. So, all right, you got grit. Emotional maturity is a big one.
Okay.
What you can imagine sitting in a meeting with everybody's done that. You're sitting in a shop meeting trying to figure something out, and there's somebody in your team that doesn't have emotional maturity. I mean, that is a drag. Like you just can't get around that. So and then we were thinking about adding another one, which I think is the most important, but it's hard to kind of put a measurable on it. But it's someone that's willing to have honest self-reflection. So important. If someone has honest self-reflection, they actually end up having all those other 5 or 6 core values that I listed. But honest self-reflection is really important. And so when I'm building a shop or when I'm consulting people on building a shop, or if I'm just listening to a shop foreman, one of my customers bitch and complain about something, it usually comes down to like a core value issue. If they have like a real unsolvable problem in their shop, right? Because if you have somebody that has an integrity problem, like no amount of problem solving is going to solve your issue. If someone's emotionally immature, like no, you're not, I mean, what are you going to do? As far as I'm concerned, those are bedrock for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you use those in your hiring process?
Oh man, it's tough. A lot of that's going to come with time. I mean, you can call up and get references. When we hire somebody, we try to do as much background work as we can. We have like a process where we have like a 3-stage hiring, where they come in at different stages. We want to make sure that they really want the job, and we ask a lot of questions. I have them take the grit test. I'd like for everybody to take the Enneagram test. I don't know if you're familiar with Enneagram or not, but
I
that's a
sure
big
am.
one. Yeah. But people kind of get, I don't want to scare anybody off when they come and apply. So I'll feel somebody out to see if they're comfortable doing that or not. But I try to do my due diligence because we don't have any time to make mistakes when we're doing a new hire. Doesn't matter if it's shipping or, I'm hiring an engineering manager. It's all a gear in the system. And so I found that like when it comes to core values, this is going to sound so weird, but like if you follow your gut, it's usually right. And it's really hard to understand the difference between gut and mind in business because we're so used to using our mind to solve problems, but that gut feeling that you have with people when you're doing an interview is usually correct. It just sometimes it takes a while to show up, prove it out. Got to trust it.
Yep. I know I've personally been bitten both ways, I didn't follow a gut feeling like, oh, the other things check out okay, but and then someone didn't work out. Yeah, great advice. Thank you. So it's always appeared to me, from what I can see that you're a very sort of sales and marketing focused business leader. Probably because maybe that's because that's how you got into it. You were doing sales first before you even started your shop, but I know it's not a strength of every shop out there. So, in your own business and having seen so many, both, from just all your years of working in the business and now when you're coaching, Yeah. What would you say about the significance and importance of being a sales and marketing driven company and how that affects the trajectory of a business?
I mean, as you and I have talked about this a lot in the past, but sales is the tip of the spear. It's everything, really. It's the most important thing. So I remember watching I don't know if you watch Shark Tank. Kevin O'Leary was talking about when he's thinking about buying a company, he doesn't really care much about what the CEO has to say or the CFO. He goes to whoever's the rainmaker. Could even be just a salesman at the company that is the one bringing in all the business, or the sales manager, or their marketing. Wherever they're getting their business from, he wants to talk to them. I'm like,
Mm.
that guy knows what he's talking about. That's it. It's all about sales. Because if you have your pipeline full, you could pick and choose who you work for. I mean, most of the customers that I have a lot of friends that have shops that don't really have a robust sales and marketing, and that's fine. That's kind of typical with manufacturing. It's sad, but it doesn't have to be that. But how do I put this? It's like you have options, right? So if you have enough, they're always complaining about a customer that won't pay their bills or that is changing their mind mid project or just causing problems. And it's like those customers have to go. You could fire customers just like you fire people. I mean, if they're not gonna work out, if they don't have integrity or don't have, a lot of aerospace companies, huge ones, I won't name any names that I've worked with, have like terrible core values. There's the people buying these products, they don't even know what they're buying. They don't know the complexity of the part, right? They don't know if they're buying a battleship or a washer. Like, it's very frustrating, right? Or an engineering group that doesn't understand that a lead time is kind of a guesstimate in a way on a really complex part, right? Or so if you find that you have a customer that isn't trying to help you be successful, like they at some point they gotta go. You wanna fill your pipeline and your all of your with customers that are more like strategic partners. But if you're just stuck and you don't have options, you just get stuck. It's really hard to make money with people that don't care about you. So
Mhm. Mm.
I think that's for me, that was kind of why I've always focused on getting new business because I always have one customer I'm looking at going, oh man, I'd love to replace them to somebody else.
Mhm.
Or diversification. I like to diversify with my products and sales so I'm not stuck. So it's another reason why I like having a lot of options. So many
Mm.
reasons.
Yeah, I've had this thought a few times, and I've never like written it down in a really crystal clear way. But this idea that, kind of like you were just saying, if you are sales and marketing driven, and you're always out there pursuing new customers, new leads, new opportunities, new part numbers, and that creates what I call positive sales pressure, where the pressure of the companies that want you to quote, that want you to make things, is greater than your capacity to actually throughput all that stuff, right? So when you have this positive sales pressure, that allows you, like you say, to become selective with what you're quoting, to fire bad customers, bring on the better ones, win work that's just better suited to your skill sets, to your, whether it's high volume, whether it's, just high complexity, whether it's aluminum, whether it's titanium, whatever it is, every shop should have a niche. And that positive sales pressure allows you to really lean into that more fully, which then makes you become more profitable, lets you, hire really good people, get out of the weeds, hopefully, if you're good at delegation and building systems. And then that allows you to, focus the strategic time on more sales and marketing. And it's like a virtuous positive cycle. Whereas if you don't do that, it's a negative cycle. And you're just like scrambling for taking whatever scraps you can get, which means they may not be a good fit for you, which means they're not going to go particularly well. So you're going to be scrambling, firefighting, with scrap and with overruns and with, it's just, so all these things rely on each other to go well or not well. But sales and marketing is a key lever to change the trajectory of everything.
Yeah, 100% agree with what you're saying. And another thing that I was thinking the other day because I'm helping a lot of different people with their sales and marketing and trying to get them to understand what their niche is or their strong point or their proven process. Looking at differentiators. And so when I'm doing sales and marketing at my companies, it really gets me to get my whole team to focus on where my core focus is. So to your point, how it kind of brings everything together. Like if you hire on somebody, consultant or an ad firm, or you want to learn how to do marketing and sales on your own, if you don't know how to do that, I suggest you go out and get help, because it is hard to learn on your own. And there's a lot of good places out there that you can source to help you out with that stuff. But if they're gonna teach you how to find out what you're good at and what you're gonna market. And so like it has focused me. I mean, that's why I actually named my company 3D Graphite and Machining. I did that so I would never machine anything except for graphite. It's like, I bring stuff to Bob, who's my first employee. He's my engineering manager. He does all our estimating, and from time to time, I'll still bring him some parts, and he just looks at me and he's like, "Matt, what did you tell me?" I'm like, "I know, but like maybe this time we could do it. Like it's a really good project." He's like, "Nope, we're just doing graphite," and it's kind of a joke around my shop, but that core focus on just graphite and being the best at graphite machining has made us the best.
Right.
Easily the best at graphite machining. If I didn't have that focus, we wouldn't be the best. So, and being the best makes it easy to do sales and marketing, because you're not
Yeah.
bullshitting anybody. The best sales and marketing is just telling the truth about your company. If you have to lie or exaggerate, like you got it all wrong.
I like that quote. I'm going to mark that one down. Well, it's funny that you named it 3D Graphite, yet you're the ones bringing projects that are not graphite, and your team is like, nope, we're holding the line here, just like your original vision. So,
Well, I mean, like I said, I have projects that come out of nowhere. I've been in the trade for so long, and they're so juicy. So it's hard to say no, right? I mean, if you could, yeah. So, but it's the best decision I've ever made. And in I guess I should say in full disclosure, like I do sales repping, so I do outsource a lot of work through a different company, different projects. But it's like, I get paid this much, and I just think like, wow, I could just run it through at night and make this much. But
yeah, sure.
you got to focus. I mean, it's just you got to put your money where your mouth is, and my guys are proud. I have a sign being made right now, which is it says through these doors walk the greatest graphite machinists in the world, and we're gonna put that on our back door where all of our guys walk through. I saw that at another shop once, and I'm not gonna name any names, but I stole that idea from them because they were outsourcing all the stuff that they didn't want to do to me. And I thought,
Oh, there you go.
me, are
Best
you guys the
business.
best? Or me or the so it's kind of a running joke at my place. I mean, that shop is much bigger, and they have great people there, and I do a lot of work for them. But I do feel like we have the greatest graphite machinists in the world. So we're gonna put that sign up.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So, sticking with sales and marketing for a minute, how do you find your customers? Do you have any interesting sort of lead gen techniques? Are you just like on the phones, LinkedIn messaging, trade shows? What do you do?
Well, you met Nicole
Mhm.
from Jubal Cube. She's my girlfriend, and she is a marketing expert. So before I met her, I thought I knew what marketing was. Again, I, and then after I got to know her and I saw how she works and how she's helped me at my company be a consultant, I'm like, I didn't know anything about sales and marketing, like nothing. It was amazing what she taught me. So, not to go too deep into that, but I do everything, right? So it's like, I mean, marketing is it's just trying to get an edge in every possible way you can. A 1% here, 0.5% there, 10% there. Just, you know, your colors of your logo, the message, making sure the message is all, I mean, more than anybody. You probably do the best marketing out of anybody I've ever met. And my girlfriend, who's a marketing expert, has, spent a lot of time on your website and looking at what you've done. And she agrees. She's like, wow, they really got that down. Like, you guys are just phenomenal with marketing. So you know how that works. I mean, I'm learning a lot. You seem to be the expert, though. I mean,
Hmm.
you guys kind of wrote the book.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, we just do what we think makes sense to, I think what you just said earlier, a few minutes ago, that, you know, telling the truth about your shop
Right.
is like the best. Yeah. I guess that's what we try to do. Try to tell the story of how we got where we got, the challenges we face and overcame and figured out solutions for, and using, social proof, which is letting the voice of your customers, be your marketing to a large degree. I mean, we did videos with you several years ago, and
Yeah.
I think you might have been the first one that, like, on camera said, "I love ProShop." And, we ended up getting, loveyouerp.com. And I was like, wow, people are actually saying this, and people don't say that about software, or ERP
Right.
systems. No one loves their ERP. It's just like a
Right.
oxymoron.
I was gonna say, like, it just triggered something in my head is, in the spirit of the podcast that we're doing here. If I was gonna give somebody some advice on sales and marketing, first thing I would say to them is don't think of it as sales. Think of it as relationship building, right? Because sales has like a bad word. It's like at my shop, when I do consulting, I always say, don't talk about time tracking. That's a bad word. Just use, Will, my integrator, taught me this. Use time blocking. It's much better. Doesn't trigger flight or flight.
Mm.
So when you think about sales, it's really not sales. It's like you're trying to build a relationship. And when you talk about marketing, you're just trying to tell the truth. So that's the first thing. And then get a really good CRM. If you're a manufacturer, some of them are free. I use HubSpot. I used to use Salesforce. And I know you've mentioned a bunch of other ones that you recommended out there. And then I think if you're a manufacturer, like you're probably not good at sales, which is probably why you were good at manufacturing. I
Yeah.
just lucked into the spot. I just been doing sales my whole life, and it was a family thing. So you don't find a lot of guys like you and I, Paul, that are salesmen that run companies, right? So you can go out there and there's a lot of really good places that you can get help and good books that you could read. I always recommend the Sales Bible. Do you know any good marketing books out there that are above and beyond?
Oh boy. I do. There's a book right over on my shelf called Obviously Awesome,
Mm,
which is a really good book about marketing and branding.
I've heard of
I
them.
think the best companies out there work on building their brands, right?
Yeah,
Because that is like a short circuit for, you got to have effective marketing. But if you're trying to market a company that doesn't have a good brand, it's so hard. It's like an uphill battle, um,
yeah,
by having a good brand that's mission driven, and, to use the start with why from Simon Sinek, like, the customers that are the most passionate about brands are totally bought into their why, right? You think about,
yeah.
Apple fans, or they're just like almost almost cult like.
Right.
They just love their
Yeah.
products. It doesn't matter what they cost. Doesn't matter, they're all bought in. So I think that's an important part of branding. And same thing with employees, right? You mentioned this to me recently. If you get employees all bought in, they become like a cult, and they just
Yep.
absolutely love the company and are so proud of it and are so bought in and so invested. It's game changing.
Yeah. You just like when I talk to people about Pro Shop and you're talking to manufacturers, like you got to engineer the process of implementing Pro Shop before you do it. Like it's got to have a plan. And so same with sales and marketing. You have to have a foundational plan. You have to engineer it. You got to talk to people that know what they're doing. It's a super important part of what you do. And if you don't do it right, if you don't do everything right, it can have negative consequence. I mean, if you go out and you spend all this money on a crappy website, people go look at it, first impression. I mean, and you want to outsource a part to somebody, like,
Sure.
yeah, I've clicked off a lot of websites just because I'm like, if maybe that was a mistake, but like first impression is everything. You can kind of get a feel for
Yep.
what a company's like by how much they pay attention to detail as far as their image goes. I think it's important.
Yeah, for sure. You've shared a lot of excellent stuff today. I'd love it if you'd kind of summarize maybe for us your like the most important strategic moves you made over the course of business, or things you've learned that you now would advise other shops that are on a little earlier in their path, besides the sales and marketing focus and core values. Yeah, any other things you would say these are just super core, the top 3 or 4 notes that they should take away from this episode?
Well, I think I always lead with people don't manage people, systems manage people. So you always want to build a system out for anything or a proven process. That's first and foremost. That's was the key to my success. That's where I made all my errors. Before, like, let's say I started implementing ProShop or got a CRM or started understanding what an org chart was and how it works, or, have a system to solve problems. That's traction, manage your people. So it's just about system building. I think that's number one. I would think people. I learned that what you can get out of an A-list employee, the difference between an A-list employee and a B-list employee is like, it's not even the same league. I could argue that I could get 3 times more out of an A-list employee than a B-list employee. For real. Maybe even 10 times sometimes. With a really good one like Kelsey, right? Think about that. If you could clone Kelsey, what could you do with that? You get what I mean? I mean, that's an A-list guy, Matt Röders. And these guys, right? They're few and far between
Yep.
when you find an A-list guy. So like always trying to go out there and find the best A-list type people makes your job so much easier in manufacturing. Especially if you can get an A-list guy in upper management that can lead. That was a big deal for me, and I just got really lucky with getting a few really good A-list guys. Actually, now I have a lot, I'd say. They're hard to grow. They gotta have all the right breeding, I guess, or they get to get lucky in the gene pool or whatever they have. I don't even know it's like magic, but that would be another one. Knowing where you're making money, where you're not making money is really important. It sounds so simple, but like, calculating your shop rate and understanding like how your business works, like fundamentally is a big deal. And there's very few shops that I know that truly can capture that. You need ProShop for something like that. That's it. Like you really got to pay attention to detail with that. And it could tell you a lot. I can keep going, but those are the top level context.
Those are pretty
Yeah.
core. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for this. It's fun to dig into the background, learn some new things about you, get to even a little deeper in how your brain works, which I'm, just think you're an awesome business person, and I appreciate you being willing to share so candidly with the audience, because we're all in here to make this industry better. We know how important it is to have manufacturing be strong in our economy, in our country, and yeah, you're giving back to it for sure. So thank you so much for all the time today and the great advice.
And thank you. Appreciate you and what you do, as a person and a friend and your whole team at ProShop. And yeah, it's been great. And I love your content. I'm just happy to be part of it. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy. See ya.